This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland right of the lane, lobbed to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs Media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including Bally Sports Ohio, without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. The Cleveland Cavaliers split their two-game trip in Florida. They will head to Boston tonight. We are recording live after a tough loss to the Orlando Magic. You know, sometimes this is a make or miss league. Hopefully this podcast will be a make, because the Cavs certainly got a lot of misses out tonight. And joining me today is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, buddy. It was not a fun game, but it was a game that I thought was still pretty encouraging. I think that one of the rough parts about this season has been that every loss has felt like the world is ending. This is a normal loss, and like a normal loss on the road to a very good team, especially a great team at home. Orlando's 11-2 at home now. It happens, you know. There was a lid on the bucket, and it just was one of those games where I just don't think like any shot left any player's hand looking good. You know, Dean was pretty much the only one where I was like, okay, that's coming off his hands well. You know, the footwork was off. You know, when Darius missed his 3 in a row on that one possession, it just didn't. You know, I knew before it went out, left his hands that all 3 were going to be short. He just didn't have his legs under him on them. You know, it's just one of those nights where
hand after getting stomped on.
Yeah, well, it's just one of those nights where the shots just weren't falling. But with that said, I really did like their effort to close out the game. I think, you know, if Donovan gets that call and you're down 4 with about, a minute left, if he makes those free throws, then, you were right in this thing. It just kind of felt like the kind of night where it wasn't going to happen because, Strus, Niang, and Okoro combined to go 1 for 23 from the field, which is a low percentage. And, it's just one of those things. I thought Darius was stellar, but yeah, just one of those nights where the offense didn't have it. Jarrett in horrible foul trouble pretty much the whole night. Only played 15 minutes. And that's what Orlando does a really good job at. They did all the things they're good at.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think if you're looking to list who I believe played well in this game, it's Darius, it's Tristan, and it's probably Dean. Like, I feel like Dean really played well defensively. He hit some shots. He was active. He got some steals. Those would be the 3 that I would say played well. But I feel like the effort level was pretty high across the board. Like, I think everybody was playing hard. I actually thought, prior to that run that Orlando made in the third quarter, I was enjoying it. Like, it was a sloppy game, but I felt like both teams were really competing hard. Orlando wanted to avenge the loss last week that they had Jalen Suggs back. I'm definitely happy that we mentioned last game that we played against Orlando that, hey, Suggs went out and that's going to make life easier for the guards, because I thought Jalen Suggs was absolutely exceptional on Donovan Mitchell tonight defensively. You mentioned the missed foul call at the end, but he was really making him work the entire night. And I just thought that he did a really, really, really tremendous job on the defensive end. And
Suggs played with his hair on fire, like he was like just an absolutely nasty on-ball defender. And I must say, though, it's time to give up Jalen. Let it go.
I was hoping you weren't going
Let it
there.
go.
I literally was biting.
Let it go, Jalen.
Like,
it's okay.
And Orlando, when they're fully healthy too, like we should mention, Markelle Fultz isn't there. Like, you can see how this is one of the best defensive teams in the league. And, in the third quarter in particular, I felt like the Cavs were really suffering from the lack of ability to put pressure on the rim. And obviously some of that has to do with Evan Mobley not being in this game, Jared Allen being out because of, foul trouble. That's going to limit it. But I think it does also show one of the limitations with this roster, which is we don't have wings that can provide that kind of rim pressure that can really attack the basket, because Max Strus, I mean, he's been an amazing addition. We couldn't be more thrilled with him. He's not great at finishing at the rim, and getting to there at a high level isn't within his wheelhouse. George Niang will do it a little bit, but he had a terrible game. I think we might need to go back to the minivan for a little bit, because this, as a debut for G-Wagon, this was not his strongest game. But I do think, not having a wing that can apply rim pressure in those situations, it makes it harder to open things up, especially when you have Jalen Suggs doing such a good job on Donovan Mitchell. I just thought that was kind of one of the takeaways that I had, where I was like, man, just from a personnel standpoint, we didn't have it. And all the obvious caveats are there. If you shoot normally, it's going to open up some things, but you want to be able to have that in your bag when you do have those off shooting nights, so you're not a team like Boston where, hey, it's make or miss, there's nothing we could really do about it, we just took our threes and tonight we didn't hit them. Like, you want to have that backup plan, and it felt like the Cavs just weren't able to generate that type of pressure.
I don't know if I all the way agree with that. I mean, I think a lot of that pressure really came from the lack of bigs on the floor. The fact that Niang was having a really rough game. You look at that third quarter, and first off, Suggs was just phenomenal. I mean, truly phenomenal. I mean, he could not be screened. Every pin down that they were setting for him, he was barely being touched. And it's not like Tristan Thompson is some slouch screener. He was really, really working his ass off to stay attached to Donovan's hip. And then in the third quarter, I think the big change they made was that they started blitzing the crap out of those pick and rolls. Goga Bitadze is not normally an up to the level kind of big, or beyond the level. I mean, that's a blitz. This felt like I was watching the 2012 Miami Heat with that scheme. Like, you don't see a lot of blitzing that hard in the league anymore, and it was a team that kind of knew their personnel. Like, to your personnel end, I don't think it's as much as the Cavs didn't have big wings as much as Tristan Thompson was the release valve, and and Orlando rightfully was like, hey, if Tristan catches it on the release at 15 feet out, like, we're gonna bet that we can recover. And that's just not, it kind of is the kind of game that makes you value what a guy like Evan does in the short roll. The fact that his processor is so fast. So, like, I think it was a little bit of I do think, like, this is a tough matchup with a guy like Suggs that can really ride Mitchell up and down the floor. Then you have the lack of the bigs and the big playmaking, and then just some great schematic changes from Jamal Mosley. I thought that move to the blitz was really, really smart, and it really gunked up what the Cavs were trying to do. And when the Cavs played it well, they generated a lot of open threes. They took 40 tonight. They just didn't make a lot of them.
Yeah, it's, and obviously the bigs would be the ones applying that rim pressure. I'm just saying, in general, you didn't have a wing that could also do that. And I think I liked in the first half going to Sam Merrill as the kind of deeper guy in the rotation, because I thought you needed to get that shooting. I thought he played really well against Miami. He was shooting it well here. I actually was impressed by his way of, like, navigating screens defensively. Like, I thought his compete level was really high. There was a couple ill-advised attempts to the basket where I'm like, you're not getting this. Like, you're driving by Franz, so he's going to be on your hip.
That transition layup to start the third, I think.
You're trying to finish over Paolo too, and like, this is just not going to go well for you. You're not going to be getting the call in this situation. But in the third, I think I would have gone to Craig Porter Jr. just to try to get some of that rim pressure going, and to, even though Merrill's going to provide the shooting, he's not going to provide the same creation in those spots. And I think you would hope that Craig could alleviate some of that pressure, and hey, maybe it's going to open up an opportunity for Donovan off a switch, or maybe he's going to get Max or Niang the type of shot that they need to start to get going a little bit. But overall, like, I'm just trying to find those constructive things within this game, because I thought the compete level was high. I thought the Cavs played well defensively. I thought, for the most part, outside of that run in the third quarter, they generated consistently good looks. And, like, sometimes you're just not going to make them, right? Like, the fact that with Jared Allen in foul trouble and Evan Mobley obviously not being available for the game, that you won the rebounding battle. You out-rebounded them 48-43. On the offensive glass, you beat them 18-12. Turnovers against a team that generates a ton of turnovers. The fact you only had 14 to their 12 turnovers is a plus. The only crappy thing is points off of turnovers. They had 26 to your 11. And I thought the Cavs, as much as they left opportunities on the table at the free throw line and with the 3-point misses, their finishing in transition and their decision making in those spots left a lot to be desired. And, one was Darius, I think, trying to get Donovan going, lobbing it up to him, which was completely ill-advised.
The Donovan pass to Darius was ill-advised. It was like, and Darius's fill in transition was ill-advised. Like, run to the corner, bro.
Yeah, it just...
That was bad.
There was a few too many of kind of those record scratches in those spots, but overall, I'm feeling pretty good about where the Cavs are right now, because I think the win in Miami, especially with the way that started with Darius getting in foul trouble early in that one and not really playing the first half, going down 16, I thought stacking that win after a really resilient game against Orlando was a big step forward. And we talked about how we want to see the Cavs go ideally, 2-2 on this road trip. We were saying that before we knew Evan Mobley was going to be out and Karis LeVert wasn't going to be coming back either, right? Like, I thought we were potentially going full squad here, and this was still going to be a test. So for the Cavs to play like they have and split these first two, I still feel like we're on track, especially considering the context.
Well, brother, you hit like 9 different things there that I wanted to react to, and I've kind of lost the plot because you just bounced from so many things. So I guess I'll just try to remember and go in order.
I'm so long-winded. I'm the worst. I'm sorry.
It's okay, brother. So one thing I did want to hit on with the potential CPJ minutes, and I agree with you. I would have played him in the third quarter once they went to that blitz, because there's a couple ways to attack the blitz, right? There is to just hit the outlet valve in your big and just kind of loft the ball over. You can try to split it, which Donovan is an amazing ad, but it's super difficult, especially against a team like Orlando, which is just arms as far as the eye can see. One thing that you can also do is just try to blast around the big. And Bizatze is not a particularly fleet-footed center. Neither is Mo Wagner. And I think something that they could have kind of played with schematically is just having a top percentile athlete like CPJ and just crazy bursty just attack Bizatze even though he came up against him and just sneak around him. I think that would have been an angle they could have generated that would have really given them the 4-on-3s. The real advantages that I think they struggled to get at points during that third. So I do think that was a thing I would have liked to see. I think he's just been too consistent at injecting life into the offense when it gets stale for me not to have turned to him there. So I think that is a legitimate criticism there. Gosh, I don't remember what else you hit. You hit so many things.
The win in Miami, resilience.
Well,
maybe, who knows?
Whatever. I think we could just probably move on to your boy Tristan Thompson, who put in a real yeoman's effort in this one, man.
Yeah, well, I think before we get to Tristan, we should probably mention, I think this was Jarrett's worst game of the year.
He's had a couple weird ones in a row, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's a tough 3-game stretch for him. He hasn't hit double digits. He had been so good prior to that it's a little jarring. And of course, these last 2 games without Mobley, you kind of hope that he'd play better. I think Orlando can be a little bit tricky just because of their ability to really put pressure on you and attack.
Yeah, he has 11 fouls in the 2 games against them.
Right. Yeah, those are the games he got in foul trouble. That wasn't the case against Miami. I thought Miami, he actually didn't get the greatest whistle when he was trying to finish around the rim, where there was a lot of contact being allowed on both ends, and it just didn't work out for him. But I thought in this game in particular, there was just a few too many instances where he was leaving his feet defensively. The third foul against Joe Ingles really jumps out to me, where I was like, you really don't have to be leaving your feet here. You have such a length advantage. And I just worry that he's a little bit of a step slow, and with the injuries the Cavs have dealt with all throughout this year. Like, I'm like, oh, is the foot okay? But he doesn't seem to be in pain, so maybe this is just a little bit of a funk. But obviously, he's been such a difference maker for the Cavs that it stands out when he's not being that same level of difference maker. So
especially when Evan is not there to play backup 5.
Right. So, he's got the freshest legs on the team, probably going into tomorrow's game against Boston. It'd be nice to see him step up in that game. But yeah, he's just got to return to form. Like, there's not a lot of, interesting takeaways from there. I think, he's just got to be better and just a little more disciplined on the defensive end. And I thought occasionally some of it, he was being put in a tough spot defensively where there wasn't enough protection at the point of attack, but overall he's just got to stay on his feet. But for Tristan to step in the way that he did and provide the level of effort he did, like you look at the night and it was basically Darius and Tristan were the only ones with like a positive plus minus. Darius was +6 in his minutes and Tristan was +8 in a game that they lost by 10.
29 minutes. I hope he's got some ice packs on the plane.
Man, 10 points, 13 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 blocks. Like, I believe he blocked Wagner both times, which was fun to see. So yeah, Tristan stepping
Wagner
up in the way
was getting grumpy. Yeah, talk about an emotive player. He was. You can tell Wagner likes to talk a little bit, and it was fun seeing Tristan, pin him to the glass two possessions in a row.
And I think he was a little frustrated with how poorly his first game went against Cleveland, where Mobley just did such a phenomenal job on him. So I actually thought, for the Cavs to do a pretty good job defensively on Wagner, to do a good job defensively on Paolo, who I was happy to see him return to the game after what looked like a scary injury. I thought they did a really good job on that, but
I think the Cavs just did not lose this game on defense. I mean, 104 points in regulation is a very, very respectable outing. Paolo scored 20 on 21. Wagner scored 19 on 18. Those the kind of numbers you like to see. Like that's normally enough for a win against the Orlando Magic.
And honestly, it's tough to have that kind of a defensive performance when you're not hitting shots, right? Like, when it's so much easier to run off of those misses and whatnot. And considering how many points they gave up in transition, like, their half-court defense was really, really stout throughout this whole game. So I thought overall it was good. They just didn't get the shooting support they needed. And, we know the value of good support here thanks to Zoom. Support for this podcast and the following message come from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects. Carter, we really buried the lead, though, because the most fun part of this game from a Cavs perspective is Darius. He's back, baby. I feel confident. Like, these last 2 games since we last podcasted, for him to get in foul trouble early against Miami, things not go his way, for him to not be rattled and come out in the third quarter and score the way that he did. And then, tonight, 36 points, 5 assists, 6 rebounds, 2 steals. Like, he was doing it all on the court, and it was nice to see him get up some threes as well. It didn't go that one stretch where he took 3 in a row. I was really, really trying to will all of those in. But it was nice to see him start to take those attempts to be more assertive. And I just feel like over the last few games, he's looking a lot more like the Darius we've kind of become accustomed to.
Yeah, I mean, I liked that he was pulling. I liked that he was just killing them at the rim. You talk about just a tough matchup for Orlando. I think they didn't really have anyone that they could throw at Darius. I mean, obviously Suggs, maybe they could have tried, but he was doing so good on Donovan that I think they were more than happy to make that trade off. So, but I thought he did I remember just a couple years ago, it kind of felt like you could put length on Darius and he would really have a hard time beating that. He cooked Franz when Franz was his primary matchup. Got clean angles to the rim almost every time. Generated clean open threes for his teammates. I think this will be a big check the potential assists kind of night for Darius.
Yeah, for sure.
He was creating good looks every time he was on the floor.
And I feel like he navigated those traps a lot better than Donovan did on the night too. Like one of the things I noticed was the Cavs were setting up a lot further behind the 3-point line to kind of give those passing lanes and those outlets there. And Donovan tried splitting a couple times, and usually ended up with Jalen Suggs on his hip, and some of the led to turnovers from him. But Darius, I thought he did a good job of giving up the ball and then relocating, getting the ball back, and just the fact that he was able to finish as well as he did at the rim against such a long team, I find to be really impressive. Like I thought this was a much better balance, where we look back on the Detroit game where we're like, you're really like trying to get the fouls a little too frequently here, and it's throwing off your overall flow to your game. I thought tonight he drew fouls well. He finished well at the rim. He took threes. He set guys up well. It was the perfect floor balance game from Darius. I was just really impressed with his night overall.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really fun night. And Justin, I got to be honest, I got something in my eye. I got to go wash my eye out. Give me 2 seconds, guys.
All right, I will absolutely.
You don't have to, Phil. I'll just throw up a slate for a minute. Sorry, guys.
Oh my goodness.
One.
Maybe the Cavs had a little something in their eye today. Maybe that's what was going on. I'm ready to embrace all conspiracy theories, because when Max Strus was hanging on the rim trying to level that out because he felt it was a little bit crooked, I want to launch an investigation. I think the rim was crooked. That's the only explanation for this many shooters to go as cold as they did. And honestly, like right now, I feel like the Cavs are at a point where the question is the offense. I feel like the offense is moving well. They're generating looks, and it's just a matter of time. But, it's going to be interesting to see, can they continue to maintain this positive momentum that they've been building and kind of weather the storm and allow guys like Darius to find his form again and to get back into that rhythm offensively. Or, going into tomorrow against Boston, I think the safe assumption is that's probably going to be a loss. Boston's going to be very rested. We're going to be shorthanded. I'm not expecting Mobley or LeVert back for that game either. So, that's going to be a really tough situation. So can they navigate that if in fact they aren't able to pull an upset win? Are they able to bounce back from that and come away with a win on Thursday and continue this momentum? Because, the schedule is going to ease up a lot come January. It's just a matter of whether or not the Cavs can, continue to build the positive momentum and that they don't get discouraged when they miss shots as a result of good process, which I think is the real test right now.
Yeah, and I thought they did a pretty good job with that in this game. I do really think they generated pretty good looks. Like I know that there was a stretch in the third quarter where it was really ugly. However, I do think that the back end of that like 7 or 8 minute scoreless stretch, they had figured it out, and they just still were missing.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
I just feel like of discouraging losses, this was among the least discouraging to me.
Yeah.
To your point about the schedule lightening up, the Cavaliers have the 25th hardest schedule for Tankathon the rest of the way. Sure, expect that to go down after 2 straight games against Boston, where they'll probably drop
and
even
Orlando,
further.
honestly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Orlando one was already factored in.
Okay, gotcha.
But yeah, so I think ultimately like they had a really, really resilient game in this one. Man, am I bummed that the first 2 games against Boston are the second half of a back-to-back and the third game in 4 nights.
Yeah, I don't really consider the third game in 4 nights too much, just because you're in the same city and you have the day off. Like I feel like that's a manageable thing, especially with
As far as 3 and 4 goes, it's the best kind.
Yeah, like it's usually when it's 3 and 4 where you've had travel between all of them, and the third's a back to back. Like that's where you really kind of see the tired legs. So I think the Cavs get up for these games. I expect them to, even though tonight was a grinded out game. I think they're going to battle tomorrow. And the tricky thing with Boston is they're just so damn good offensively, and they're so good at home, but the whole ball game with them is they jack up threes. Like, and if those threes aren't going down, if they're a little bit rusty because they basically haven't played in a week, that could go in the Cavs' favor. But at the same time, I'm going to be interested in watching that Boston game of whether or not they're able to keep their identity defensively, or if they're going to start over helping. Because I think if the Cavs stay within their scheme and you just kind of live with the shots that Boston's going to take, that's going to make it harder for them if they're not hitting their threes. But if they start to hit their threes and you start overreacting to that, all of a sudden you start to generate too many open looks. And I think we saw that earlier in the year with the Cavs defense. So that's going to be one of those things that I'm really focusing on, especially in the second night of a back-to-back.
Boy, does it hurt against Boston to not have Evan. And I'm assuming we're not going to have Evan, and we'll choose to be pleasantly surprised if he ends up playing, because you can go as big as them. And not a lot of teams can do that. You can play Evan, put him on Tatum, you can put Jared on Porzingis, and then when they go to their uber big lineup with Horford at the 4, you can put Dean in at the 3, and Dean has historically done a really nice job on Tatum, so you can kind of maintain your defensive shell. You don't have to break containment to go chase Tatum around, but you can't do that in this construct. So, the Cavs will have to play a little smaller without Evan, certainly without Karras as well, who, killed Boston in that early game last year. And the matchup just gets a lot harder. Evan is kind of the Swiss Army knife that I was really proud of the Cavaliers' ability to make the games against Boston hideous last year. They made them ugly and made Boston kind of just become the walk up and chuck a 3 team that they are at their worst.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a harder job to do that with the roster construction the way it is. But I think in terms of what I'm most interested to see is, I thought that Boston couldn't do much with Darius and Donovan as a backcourt last year. Marcus Smart, he was good on Donovan, but not good on Darius. I don't think Marcus Smart has ever been a good Darius Garland defender. And now they have, the best perimeter defensive duo in the league in Drew Holiday and Derek White. And I would presume that Derek White will take the Garland assignment and Drew will take the Donovan assignment. And both those are tough,
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see if the Cavs can get their offense off despite that, point of attack. And then I'm interested to see how switchy Boston decides to get, given that, the Cavs' length advantage is a little mitigated with Mobley out of the lineup.
Yeah. It's going to need to be a good game from Jared, because you look at those guard defenders and like it's a toss up between which one's the best guard defender in the league right now, right? Like it's Derek White and Drew Holiday are phenomenal. So if they're going to be applying pressure and you have the length of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis around them, that's going to be really, really tough for the Cavs to generate good offense if they're not applying rim pressure, right? Like that's just taking too many things offensively off of the table, and you're already likely down your top outlet guy in Evan Mobley. Like I think against a defense that's as good as Boston, that's a really, really tough test, because you look at like the schedule adjusted defensive rating. Boston's number 2. Like that's the second best defense in the league, and they're even better at home. That's the 5th best offense. That's the best net rating in the league. That might be the best team in the league right now, with Denver being down Jamal Murray. Like this is the toughest test that the Cavs have faced all season, and it's made tougher because of the situation in terms of schedule. And
it's funny,
you
don't, to be clear, but you almost wish that they had just lost by 15 tonight and packed it in with 5 minutes to go, just to save everyone's legs if you were going to lose anyway. But obviously, you can't coach that way. You can't play that way.
No, you can't. But it's going to be a really tough test, and I'm interested to see how they do. And like, frankly, I'm more interested in Thursday. Like I just, I am always ready to be pleasantly surprised, but I just think like tomorrow's game is going to be very, very difficult against Boston with the situation. And I'm interested to see how they adjust. So obviously, more adjustments are going to be available to JB and the coaching staff if Evan returns for either of these games. But if he doesn't, I'm interested to see, are they able to find other ways to counteract whatever Boston's doing in this Tuesday game. Like I really do like these situations where you play the same team twice and there isn't travel, especially if you have a day off, because I just feel like that lends itself to some of that game planning and changes that you can make. And I thought the Cavs have made some good adjustments lately overall. Like JB going to zone against Miami really turned the tide of that game. Like it turned a being down 16 into a halftime lead that they just kind of built on from there. I thought, setting up offensively a little further away from the 3-point line gives you better outlets when teams are trapping and blitzing. So I feel like they've been making good adjustments, but you are going to run into the limitations of your personnel to some extent.
Yeah, and like, as good of a Tristan Thompson game as this Orlando game was, I just don't know if you can ask that of him 2 games in a row, at this point in his career.
Not coming off of 30 minutes.
Yeah, and like, and frankly, like, this is a spot where you kind of have to say, like, where you might kind of have to be like, hey, like, Damian, we need you to be tough, give us some boards, because like if not a game, like if not a spot like this for Damian, it kind of feels like this spot's not going to come this year.
If not then when?
Yeah,
kind of thing, right?
It kind of feels like it's just he's not going to get a chance to play even when the team is under duress. I mean, this is an Orlando team that was huge, and the fact that they just went to Wade and Niang sharing duties at the 5 kind of shows you where they are in terms of kind of their trust for that 4th, 5th big spot. For Damian, or even Isaiah Mobley for that matter. So like, I think if not, I think you said it right. If not tomorrow, it just might not be happening this year for Damian, which would be disappointing, because I think clearly he was someone that the Cavs front office really liked. They wouldn't, you don't normally trade. It was an unusual transaction, I guess, is what I'll say. So really hope he can kind of get a chance to make an imprint and help out a little, because again, it's pretty reliant on Tristan Thompson to give you good minutes right now if Jarrett gets in foul trouble.
Yeah, it's a lot to ask, especially second and back-to-back for Tristan. But before we wrap this up, I do want to get your thoughts on the in-season tournament wrapping up. Obviously, the Lakers won. LeBron got his in-season tournament MVP. That was kind of fun to see. What were your thoughts of it? Because this was something that you and I have been keeping a close eye on, and I just want some of your takeaways now that we've seen it in its entirety.
Great success. Maybe a little contrived, maybe a little forced, but you know what? What isn't? Any marquee,
just like our friendship, right?
Yeah. Any marquee thing like this, someone has to come up with an idea and say, "What if we did this?" And then, if the league was going to, I think the league did a really nice job of supporting it. They pushed it. I thought the courts were actually, I didn't like the courts at first. And I think it was one of the most inspired bits of iconography that I've seen in a while, in terms of throw aside your opinion of the design of the courts. Just the fact that if you turn on a game and saw the court, you're like, oh, it's a tournament game. Like, that was really nice in a way that, you didn't have to, put a big bug on the screen that said in-season tournament. I think they learned a lot of good lessons. I'm sure they're going to tweak a little bit year over year. Obviously, I had my opinions either on the last one or the pod before that, where I kind of talked about, I really do think, expanding the pool of teams that gets in would be really nice. But ultimately, I thought it was a really, really successful first try, and just hope that hope to see it continue. And I think it will.
Oh yeah, I think it will. I liked seeing that the competitiveness was up. I thought as you got later into those knockout stages, I thought those games were phenomenal. I thought, with the exception of the Pelicans game, all the semifinals and even the finals were really well done and fun to watch. I wasn't sure at first why they were playing in Detroit with that court. But outside of that, I thought, it was fun. It felt like a big game.
They did some real quick before. I have a question. Did they like audio engineer this thing differently? Like, I felt like I could hear more court sounds and more like crowd sounds. It was. I don't.
Very specifically, you could hear one couple in that Lakers-Pacers game that were very clearly rooting for Indiana, and I could hear them the entire game. I don't know.
I feel like it was all the Vegas games. I don't know. I would love to talk to someone from ESPN to get a sense to learn. I think they mic'd it differently or did something, because everything just sounded. I felt like I could hear the players better. I know, like, that the doubleheader wasn't as full, but like, there's a lot of empty arenas on any given NBA night, or not full NBA arenas on any given night, and you couldn't hear as well as I could hear. I don't know. It was interesting.
It was interesting, and if I'm putting all my cards on the table, I think in the semifinals, I was listening to a podcast while watching the game. I sometimes do that just to multitask, but the final I wanted to just kind of consume as an event, and it definitely felt like an event. The one thing I kind of had in mind was, I was thinking, like, even if I felt FOMO, because I'm like, this would have been a great experience for the Cavs, and it sucks that a 5-point loss to the runner-up was enough to kind of keep them out of it. But I was just kind of thinking, like, from a fan perspective, it'd be nice if there was a little bit more of a break between knowing who qualifies for the Vegas stages of this and the actual semifinals and finals, just so that fans of those teams can buy tickets. Because I was listening to Greatest of All Talk with our buddies Ben and Andrew, and they were talking about how even like some of the beat guys for Milwaukee were like, man, it was tough. Like, we had to scramble. We were barely able to like figure out our flights to get here in time. And I just feel like getting more of the fans of those teams there, I think you're going to be more likely to make a trip of it if you actually have the ability to plan and have that little bit of a break and make a trip of it. So that was one thing I kind of had in mind, because it definitely was different being a neutral site game rather than the intense crowds we saw at the earlier stages of the in-season tournament. And
I will say, I'm just not a neutral site basketball fan in the macro. I get why you kind of have to do it for this, and I see what eventizing it, I think, is smart, makes perfect sense. As a personal taste thing, I just like a home court. I like a home crowd.
And I was thinking, because me, I love my tweaks. I love brainstorming ideas. So I was like, wouldn't it be fun if like the winner got to host it the next year? So it's King's Court. But then I'm like, what happens if they don't make the in-season tournament and we're just running into schedule hell because we're trying to get games in at the Crypt? I'm like, that's not going to work. But yeah, it would be fun.
Maybe you just get an automatic berth if you extend it to 16. I don't know. There's ways. There's roads.
Yeah, maybe, but then I would be a hypocrite because I complained about that with the CEBL finals for whoever was sticking here in the summer. So I thought it was a lot of fun. I loved seeing how seriously LeBron took it. Like, I think that's one of those moments where, and you and I have talked about this privately, so I'll give you credit there too, but that's one of those moments where LeBron recognizes kind of the weight of being the face of the NBA and how important it is for him to set the tone and for him to play as hard as he did. It's absurd that he's able to get to that level still. But the seriousness that he and Anthony Davis apply to that game, like they were absolutely attacking the basket. They were locked in defensively. And I just thought it's such a good opportunity for the guys that don't have the playoff experience to experience an environment about like that earlier in the season. I just feel like it's a cheat code and it's going to make them better prepared for the playoffs just because of how seriously they took this tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. I just, I don't know if it was a conversation Adam Silver, has with LeBron where he's like, hey, man, it'd be really cool if you were on board. Because, we've seen the degree to which, the face of the league can kind of set the tone for something to succeed or fail. We've talked about this a lot with the All-Star game, that when LeBron takes it seriously, everyone else kind of starts taking it seriously. And so it was cool to see him do that, and just really cool to see him be this dominant. He was awesome.
He really was.
He is so old. I saw a tweet that Joe Flacco is 20 days older than him. It's unbelievable.
That's absurd. And congrats to Browns fans. That's really fun to see Flacco ball out like that. I'm happy for you guys because anytime the Cleveland sports scene in general is happy, I think it's better for the overall health. So it's nice to see that win. But yeah, it's mind-boggling how good he is at that age still. And it was interesting too to watch them throw that much length at Halliburton, to blitz the hell out of him, and to see even a 6'5" point guard. I think that goes to show you having the right counters there and having those outlets available is really important against that kind of a defense, because even if you have a 6'5" point guard, he's not able to jump over and throw those passes over the length. You have to be able to anticipate that and get the ball in your hands and relocate. But I thought they just did such a good job of preventing him from getting downhill. And as another team that has a very guard orientated offense, I thought that was something that was instructive that I was kind of keeping an eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge success. Super fun tournament. It was nice to have something to kind of pay attention to in December. And what's kind of nice is this should be the least interesting one, the least stakes fueled one. It's the first one ever, It in a way, these tournaments kind of build on themselves over the course of history. These sorts of activations, they start mattering, 15, 20 years in a lot of times. Yeah. That's just kind of how it works. So the fact that the first one was fun, that it was a nice proof of concept, single elim basketball is fun as hell. It worked, and that's all you can say.
Yeah, and I think getting intensity at this time of the year is big because, some people that don't love basketball, but they love to follow their team and just keep an eye on the NBA in general. Most of them don't tune in until after Christmas. So I think anytime you can get eyeballs and improve the level of play prior to Christmas, and now we're 2 weeks away from that, I think that's definitely a win. So I'm interested to see how it evolves. I hope next year the Cavs make it further than they did. And you know what? Let's keep our fingers crossed, Carter. Maybe we'll get proven wrong and the Cavs will be healthier sooner rather than later, and maybe even steal one of these games against Boston. That would be a lot of fun. We will be going live Wednesday with Bobby Manning, who will help break down the first game against Boston and preview the second. So looking forward to that. Big thanks to everyone that tuned in live. Make sure you like and subscribe. Click the notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you want to support us, if you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of that review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.